I'm Christo Greyling. I'm a reverend in the Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa. I'm working for World Vision at this stage full-time as the HIV AIDS and Faith Partnerships Advisor. But most of all, for me, HIV and AIDS is not something that is just a theory or a job that I do. HIV is part of my life. I'm HIV positive. I've been HIV positive that I know of since 1987. I heard I was HIV positive when I was still in seminary, busy studying theology. I was young, I had my life ahead of me. I dreamed about how God is going to use me in His ministry. And HIV and AIDS was the last thing that I ever had on my mind, to think that I could become HIV positive. I heard I was HIV positive that day in September in '87, and that was a huge blow to my life. At that stage, the doctor said to me, it might be a few months, it might be a few years, but you must be ready that you can become ill, and that you might die very soon. I couldn't understand at that stage, why did God allow this in my life? I had all these questions in my heart. Why? Why me? I remember I was driving back home, and the one thing that was in my mind was, God, I don't understand why you allowed HIV in my life, but let your will be done and your kingdom come. Only you will know how you will be able to be glorified within a situation of me living with HIV. Now, so many years later, I can only see God's footsteps in my life. And I can see that God is in control, and that He's the one that can even use a negative thing like HIV and AIDS to be glorified. At that stage, when I heard I was positive, the doctor said, please don't tell anyone that you're HIV positive, because people might be afraid of you, they might stigmatize you, you might get rejected because they find out you're HIV positive. And I was wondering, should I tell anyone? When I arrived back at my home, all my friends were sitting in my room, and they were just a bunch of students. And the first question they asked me is, hey, what did the hospital say? It was a normal question to ask. They knew I went back for the hospital for some more tests. And at that stage, I was so shocked that I just told them, well, I've just heard I've got HIV. They didn't know how to react. They were just as shocked as I was at that stage. But I experienced no rejection from them at all. They were just there for me. I experienced that my friends, who were all theological students, who I expected that they will be afraid of me or shun me, that they were instead just standing around me, and they were just there when I needed them. They could have preached to me about the song that we sing in Africa that says, what a friend we have in Jesus. But they didn't preach to me about what a friend we have in Jesus. They showed me what a Jesus we have in a friend. They were there, and that made a huge difference. At that stage, I was in a relationship with a girl that I really loved, and I thought that I must tell her that I was HIV positive. She came to my room just after I told my friends, and one of them said, well, don't you think you must tell Liesl as well? So I couldn't do anything else, I just had to tell her. She couldn't react at that moment. On the way home, I just said to her, please go and talk to one of your friends. Don't try and live with this on your own. Eventually, I felt I can't ask this girl to marry me because how she will be married to a person who's HIV positive, she might become HIV positive herself. She will never become able to have children. I just felt it was unfair to ask that of a girl to marry me. But she said that she loved me before I became HIV positive. And the fact that I've got a virus don't change anything. She said she's going to marry me even though I'm HIV positive. In April this year, well, it is 19 years that we've been married. I never dreamt that I would find someone that has demonstrated God's love and commitment as Liesl has demonstrated in my life. But if we look to our situation, then into my situation, then I realized that there's a few things that I can just hold on to. He's the one that is with us in our situation. And he's Emmanuel, not only in Christmas time, but he's also Emmanuel every day of our life. He's involved with my life. He's my anchor. And I am thankful to know that when there's nobody that understands what you feel like, nobody that understands what you fear, then it's God that promises us that He is the one that understands, He's the one that is with us. And for me, that is an amazing thing to know. I know that HIV is not the end of the road. Death is not the end of the road. It's only the beginning. I know that Christ has conquered death, and therefore I can hold on to the fact that He died and He's alive and He stood up, He rose from the dead, and therefore I know that death is not a full stop. It's only a semicolon. Death is not a wall into which we walk. It is a bridge into something more fantastic. I never thought I'm going to live for so many years. I thought initially that it's going to be a few years and then I will become ill and die. I was afraid to tell anyone. So the first 5 years after I heard I was HIV positive, I didn't share this fact that I'm HIV positive except with the closest people that were my friends or my family. But then I always knew that God wanted to use this negative thing in some positive way. I felt that I want to be a witness for Christ. 5 years after I heard I was HIV positive, while I was in a congregation serving as a minister, I felt that the first symptoms of HIV started to appear. And I thought that time is now very limited, and if I wanted to make a difference and if God would be able to use me, I must at this stage start to come out with the fact that I'm HIV positive. So I decided I want to share this with my congregation and tell them that I'm HIV positive, and also share with them that I've got a vision that I want to work in the field of HIV and AIDS to show people that a person who's HIV positive, firstly, is a normal person like anyone else. But that it could have just as been the neighbor next door. HIV doesn't choose only certain people. It could happen to anyone. But I also wanted to give information from first-hand experience to share the information with people. And thirdly, I wanted to be a witness for Christ, to show that I can have hope because God has conquered death, even in the midst of living with HIV and AIDS. I was really afraid about how my congregation is going to react. You might have been wondering the whole time about the one question that might be in your mind. You might have been wondering, how did he get it? Be honest, is that what you might have been thinking? Well, it's not important how I got it. The fact is, I am HIV positive. But while you were wondering, let me share with you, just so that you can get it out of your mind, about how I got infected. I'm a hemophiliac. That means I'm a bleeder. I've got a bleeding disorder which causes my blood not to clot, and therefore every time I have a bleed somewhere internally in a joint, I have to infuse myself with some clotting factors, which is a concentrate out of blood. And somewhere in 1984 or 1985, I got infected blood products that infected me with HIV. Now you know how I got it. When I told my congregation that I was HIV positive, they also wanted to know, how did I get it? I wondered still today, how would they have reacted if I did contract the HIV virus in a different way? But the important thing that we have to tell each other is, it is not important how someone contracted HIV. The fact is that person is in a crisis, the person needs support, needs the embracement of the people that surround him, so that he will be able to know that he's not alone in this. I have been amazingly blessed. One thing that never could have happened in our lives was that we could have children. My wife, after all this time, of 19 years of being married, is still HIV negative. That shows something amazing. It shows you that with the right precautions, a person can live with another person with HIV without the risk of infection. We have a normal life. We don't take any extra precautions, except that we have to make sure that Liesl never would get in contact with my blood or with seminal fluids. So we had to use condoms. Luckily, we made the commitment to one another before we got married, when we just started dating, that we're not going to have a sexual relationship until we marry. I'm today extremely thankful for that, because that has saved my wife's life. Because I was abstinent, because we made that promise to wait with sexual relationship until we married, that's why my wife never got infected before we got married. But since we got married, we had to use condoms. And we had to use it consistently and correctly. And in our circumstances, that was the thing that saved my wife's life as well. Because 19 years of marriage relationships, she's still HIV negative. But having children was just not possible, because that would have caused the risk that Liesl could have become HIV positive herself. But then we started to see some amazing research that started to show that there's a direct correlation between how many viruses are present in a person's blood or within the semen, and how easy it is to transmit the virus. That means the higher the concentration of the virus, the easier the virus would be transmitted to another person, and the opposite, that the lower the virus concentration or the viral load, the less the chances would be of transmitting the virus to someone else. And when this research appeared, we started to realize, but that could mean that we could actually try to have children of our own. So we did a lot of research and read a lot and really studied to see if this was the indications that the research showed, which it did. And then we spoke to a lot of medical people to find out, should we do this? Should we take the risk of actually trying for our own children? Eventually, we prayed and we prayed, but we had to make a decision. And we decided we're going to trust God that we're only going to have unprotected sex for 3 months in the most fertile time of Liesl's ovulation cycle. And luckily, within the first month that we tried, Liesl fell pregnant. 3 months later, we tested her to make sure if she was HIV positive or did become HIV positive or not. And she was still HIV negative, which proved to you that the research was right. And if she didn't become HIV positive and she's pregnant, that means that the virus cannot, because she's negative, cannot transmit to the child. Because the virus is not in the sperm cell or in the ovum of the woman, it is in the seminal fluid. So if the eggs get fertilized, then it means that that child that starts to develop there is HIV negative. So That meant that our first child was born HIV-free. We called this child Annika, which means gift, grace, because that is what it is. She is to us a symbol of hope. She's a symbol that HIV is preventable and manageable. And when it worked the first time, we decided, well, if it worked the first time, then we trust it will work a second time. And so we tried again 2 years later, and Mia was born. And both these children are HIV-free. So this is a hopeful story. A story that shows with the right knowledge, with the right attitude, with the right information, HIV can be prevented and can be managed and can be treated. HIV is not necessarily a death sentence. It's a life sentence. But we need people to support us. There's people with HIV all around us. People need our support. People need your support. As a Christian, I need to know that I do not stand alone. Corrie ten Boom, she was a lady that was in the Nazi prison camps. She once said, if God leads you onto rocky roads, He will always supply you with strong shoes. If God leads you onto rocky roads, He will always supply you with strong shoes. And the strong shoes that God supplies are you, are people who's willing to come into the lives of people living with HIV and just be with Him. I experienced that support. I got it from my friends, from my family, and that's why partly I'm still here. I encourage you to be that friend, to be the church, the body of Christ that are willing to be there for people with HIV. We need you.